Well, he shot the judge, but he did not shoot the deputy. This is a bonus episode of He Shot the Judge, but did not shoot the deputy. We're talking about that sheriff there in Kentucky, Wattsburg, Kentucky, that shot the judge. We're going to be telling you all about that. There's some new stuff that's just developed. That's why we're calling it a bonus episode. Actually, it's part 3. Plus, you're going to hear about Charlie's red carpet crazy crook. That's right, a red carpet crazy crook. This and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. It's what some people are calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. Charlie Crimebuster, charliecrimebuster.com, and peacemakernetwork.com are copyrights owned by Charlie Crimebuster. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Glad to have you around the Charlie Crime Train today. It's going to be a bonus episode of I Shot the Judge, but did not shoot the deputy. And we certainly have a mystery on our hands. We're going to tell you all about that. But right now, let me take a moment to invite you to reach out with a shout out. You can reach us, charliecrimebuster at gmail.com, charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. You can ask questions. You can make suggestions about other episodes. You can even lodge objections. We always say it is a safe spot here for you at Charlie Crimebuster. And if you'd like to support the program, well, go right over to peacemakernetwork.com. You can become a part of a whole group of people who are helping those brave men and women who run toward danger instead of away from danger. That's right. We're talking about the military, those brave men and women of the military, and our first responders, and of course, law enforcement. You can read all about that. You can become a badge, B-A-D-G-E, badge supporter for as little as $3 a month. It'll help us with the podcast, but it'll also help us help these brave people. And if you'd like to get caught up on all the other episodes, tons of them out there, go to charliecrimebuster.com, charliecrimebuster.com. We're going to have all that in the show notes. And don't forget, every week, James Buckland, our producer, James and I, we talk about the episode that we just dropped. In other words, this next week, we're going to be talking about this very episode. So if you hear something on this episode that really kind of gets you interested, like to know more information, well, join us as we talk about the episode together. That's on our YouTube channel. Hey, all these links, the link to reach me to a shout out, you can do that right there by going to the show notes, and all you got to do is click on a link. There you'll find all of those that I've just talked about. Even the website. All you got to do is just click. And the YouTube channel. All right there in the show notes. Well, let's get down to it. We certainly do have a mystery on our hands in this case. However, it's a different type of mystery, isn't it? You see, this is not a whodunit type of mystery. Actually, there was a video of the judge being shot by the sheriff. That was played at a court hearing last month. That video, by the way, which did not include audio, it did show the man identified by police as Sheriff Steins pulling out a gun and shooting the judge, Judge Mullins, as he sat at his desk. Then he walked around the desk, pointed the gun at the judge, had fallen to the floor, fired again. Showed all of that. And, of course, there was a lot of emotion in the courtroom as it was played. Yep, Judge Mullins, he died from multiple gunshot wounds. That's what the detective said at the earlier hearing. So, there's no doubt that the sheriff shot the judge. That's no mystery. The mystery has always been why. Why did the sheriff shoot the judge? So why did he shoot the judge? Last episode, well, it was based on what the defense attorney said. We kind of revealed that the defense was going to pursue, well, it led to a possible, now note I said possible motive. But guess what? Now this week, he all but reversed his direction, moved into a total different way. What does that mean? What kind of a game is the defense playing? Well, we're going to tell you all about that in just a moment. But right now, it's time for us to share with you what we share every episode, and that is what we call our Crazy Crook story. Kind of way the light and load of some of the dark stuff that we cover. So here, my friend, is Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook story of the week. And this one we're going to call our Charlie's Red Carpet Crazy Crook story. Yep, that's right. Crazy crooks are everywhere. Now get this, even on the red carpet on the world stage. Our Crazy Crook story today is sort of a famous guy. Yep, his name is Austin Tanner. And he started up as a number of country artists do. He started by singing in his church. Then he moved over to the country music lane by writing a heartfelt song for his wife on their 15th wedding anniversary. Thereafter, he forged some partnerships with some renowned songwriters, and this guy has well been on his way to a true country star. However, his main hit that he wrote for his wife, All We Need, well, maybe it wasn't all that authentic as some people might imagine, because it appears, at least allegedly, that he wanted more, that he didn't have all that he needed. Because he was indicted by a grand jury back in April on multiple charges, including 2 counts of first-degree insurance fraud, theft of property, attempted theft. You see, it appears that Mr. Tanner, well, he had been under investigation for these crimes for some time. Now, you're probably thinking now, he is a crazy crook because of this thing he had going for him as a country music artist, and then he did something so stupid and got charged by the grand jury. Well, that may have made him stupid in the eyes of some, but it did not quite make him a crazy crook. But listen on now, okay? This aspiring country music artist attended his first CMA Awards, Country Music Awards, for those of you who do not know country music. He attended it, but then he also posted about it. And he said these words, quote, "Last night was nothing short of magical as we walked the red carpet at the CMA Awards." He went on to say, quote, "This moment marked a dream come true." And of course his post was assisted by photos of him and his wife at the event. But here is the crazy part, folks. He was out on bond. Yep. He had been out on bond from those earlier charges. And one of the conditions of his bond was that he was not to leave the state of Alabama. And folks, I can tell you for sure, Nashville is not in the state of Alabama. So folks, country music star Austin Tanner, who was on the red carpet, who was not very bright to allow himself to get caught up in the law in the first place, but then not only violated the law even more by violating his bond conditions, but then he even posted on social media that he was out of state. Left a giant digital footprint that authorities easily found. This, my friend, led the authorities to begin proceedings to revoke his bond. So this guy, who left the state while he was out on bond, but then posted about it, is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, back to our main focus, and that reminds us, does it not, that we ought to be careful what we post? Always pause before you post. All right, back to the main focus. So now we thought the lawyer for Sheriff Steins had left us breadcrumbs to follow. Yet now he appears to be using Play-Doh instead of breadcrumbs. But first, let's go back a little bit and talk about possible motives that have been speculated, no less say speculated, because now it's more of a mystery now than ever as to why the sheriff shot the judge. But there are at least 3 motives that have been floated by other people. First, let's talk about the possible motive of the fact that the judge and the sheriff worked together on a drug prevention program. In fact, it was quite a novel one, especially for this small Appalachian town like Whitesburg. They decided, the sheriff and the judge, that for nonviolent, low-risk abusers, those that have been arrested, they would give them an opportunity to get treatment, to get clean, so to speak, from their habit. And according to what I've been researching, well, it appears that their plan had been somewhat successful. In other words, instead of filling the jails with addicts, they were placing many of these in treatment programs. Some of these were working. They were staying clean. Now, as you know, drugs are fueled by addiction. The more people addicted, the more money drug pushers are making. And when people's money wheelbarrows, when their wheelbarrows are turned over, well, people get enraged. Then violence enters the equation. The sheriff said immediately after his arrest that they were kidnapping his wife and daughter. That's what he implied. So I asked you, did someone threaten the sheriff with his family's lives to get him to shoot the judge, therefore bringing that treatment plan to a standstill? Would that be a motive? Well, it was one that was speculated. I did not hold a lot to it, but some people may have thought that. But then there was a lawsuit that the sheriff was involved in. The sheriff's deputy, Ben Fields, was indicted and had been convicted of exchanging favorable treatment to a female inmate for sexual favors. He even pled guilty to it. But then after that, there was a lawsuit that was filed against the sheriff and the county regarding this case. It was alleged that Sheriff Steins was involved not in this terrible action as far as being involved in the actual actions that took place where the deputy abused this inmate, but rather the sheriff was being sued for failing to properly train and supervise Fields. Ben Fields was the name of the deputy. Therefore, that contributed to the crime that the deputy was engaged in. Now, I have to say, as a chief deputy, I was involved in all kinds of lawsuits. People would sue the sheriff, the chief deputy, for actions of others. The reason was to get them to the big pockets of the county or the agency involved. It was a big deal, but it was not a big deal, if you know what I mean. It was all part of the process, one that I understood. However, Sheriff Steins, he appeared to be especially disturbed in his deposition. He was not handling that very well. He often asked for breaks. He appeared to be really upset about what was going on around his life at that time. And one of the attorneys handling the lawsuit, well, he told People magazine that is, that Steins was acting quote unquote odd during the deposition. He even lost weight, told reporters about his stress. Now, an interesting thing was the abuse of this inmate by Deputy Fields took place in Judge Mullins' chamber. That's right. The very same chamber that the judge was shot in. How's that for being ironic? By the way, chamber is just a fancy way of saying the judge's personal office or offices. So why was the sheriff so upset about this? Did he tie the judge somehow into this process of the lawsuit? Did he think that the judge was responsible for him being placed into this lawsuit? Again, that's just another speculative motive for the sheriff shooting the judge. But there was another one, at least that we felt was a very interesting, revealing one. You see, the lawyer had talked to the press before this past week when they had, first of all, the preliminary hearing. See, after somebody is charged, there's a preliminary hearing in the state of Kentucky. You have like 10 days to prove there's a reasonable reason for you, a probable cause rather, for you making the arrest. And there, it was alluded by the questioning of the officer on the stand, the preliminary hearing, that the sheriff, while he was in the chambers, before he shot the judge, he tried to phone his daughter while in the judge's chamber. And then again, he also took the judge's phone and again tried to call his daughter. In other words, get this, for some reason, the judge's 15-year-old daughter's phone number was in the phone of the judge. Wow, now you talk about motive. If there was something going on between the judge and the sheriff's daughter, well, that's motive for just about any dad to want to pick up a gun and shoot somebody, don't you think? But this is why, this last week, the attorney's comments, because after the preliminary hearing, now there's the arraignment, when it's kicked up to a higher court. And the attorney's comments, again, imploded into this case. Because now he's saying about that phone, well, there's nothing proven there, and he kind of downplayed the fact about the phone call that the sheriff made to his daughter from the judge's phone. He said that it would be looked at in the totality of the case, but it was not necessarily, as the attorney appeared to allude to be the real motive in the case. Wow! Now that's a 180, if not a 360 move from the case. Earlier, he was teasing the press, and the world was watching all about that. But now he seems to think that it's more about the lawsuit than it was the fact that the judge's daughter's phone number was in the phone of the judge. Wow. So where does that lead us now? We're all wondering about the sheriff's motive in the case. Here's what we do know. We do know that the sheriff had lunch with the judge and others on that day. While they were there, they were talking, and the judge said, let's talk about this in private in the chambers. So they left that lunch that day. They went back to the judge's chambers. The sheriff walked into the judge's chambers and shot the judge. He then came out and gave himself over to the authorities without incident. He had stated, number one, just treat me fair. And number two, he said, my wife and daughter are about to be kidnapped. Or they're kidnapping my wife and daughter, something to that end. So his attorney, Jeremy Bartley, he argued that Steins was experiencing an extreme emotional disturbance, and that strong emotional disturbance would impact the charge of murder. He said there's not enough evidence that was presented to really substantiate the murder charge. He went on to say that he thought that they had established probable cause for manslaughter, but not murder. He said the shooting was not planned, and again that the judge was experiencing, quote unquote, now listen to this, an extreme emotional disturbance at the time. Police Detective Clayton Stampler. He testified that Steins and Mullins, again, he said that the judge made a statement to Mickey about, do we need to meet private in my chambers? That was what I was told. That's what the investigator said. And then he said again that officers told him prior to the shooting, Steins tried to call his daughter from inside Mullins' chambers. He then borrowed Mullins' phone and attempted to call her again, and it appeared that the judge had the 15-year-old's daughter's phone number in his phone. But now the attorney is saying, well, that the lawsuit that the sheriff was involved on was certainly a part of the motive. What does that mean? You see, he said that it almost occurs that he's backtracking now and getting away from this idea that the daughter's phone number was in the judge's phone. Stampler says it could be, but I don't know that for a fact, in other words. He also said, the state police detective who is investigating this, I talked to him, he didn't say nothing about what happened. That's what Stampler, the investigator, said to the AP. He said he was calm. He said, treat me fair. So what are we now to think about the sheriff's motive in all of this? Now here, are some thoughts that you might want to scratch your head about. Is this lawyer simply throwing up everything he can against the wall to see what will stick? Or is he trying to just confuse the prosecution on how he'll defend the case? But here's another thought that I had that I wanted to share with you today. If, and I'm saying if, because there's no evidence other than the fact that the sheriff was using the judge's phone to call his daughter, that there was something going on between the judge and the sheriff's daughter. But if there was something going on between the judge and the daughter, this would be something, don't you think, that neither family would want to drag out into the court before the world? So if the judge's family did not want this to go to court, would this give leverage to the defense so that they might get a good deal for the sheriff on the manslaughter case? We were told in the preliminary hearing that the sheriff's daughter's phone number was on the judge's phone. Why? Why was it there? But if that was released all before the public, before the trial, don't you see that would take some of that leverage away? It would not be as influential in getting a lesser charge. If the news was already broadcast all the way out there, wouldn't that say to the judge's family, well, everybody already knows about it anyway, let's just go to court? But if that was not released in a large public way, then you could easily see where the judge's family would say, we don't want to drag his name through the mud anymore. Let's just settle with a deal and keep this from going to court. So is that what this attorney is now trying to do? Is that why he seems to be backing off the motive of there being something between the judge and the sheriff's daughter? Is he backing off on that because he wants to use that as a leverage? Or is he backing off because it's really not the motive and the motive is tied up in the lawsuit? Wow. Makes you want to say, scratch your head, right? But before we leave, let me lay something else on you now. Now get this. There was a woman who was employed by the sheriff's office who also gave her phone to investigators to be examined. And the state police detective testified that she was one of Stein's employees and believed that she had received text messages from Stein's that detailed what occurred at lunch and ultimately led up to the shooting. Wow. Could this whole mystery be solved by what was on the phone of this employee? Believed that she had received text messages from the sheriff, and it detailed what occurred at lunch, and that ultimately led to the shooting. What occurred at lunch? That's the question, isn't it? Because then they both agreed to go to the meet in the judge's chambers and to follow up what was on their minds. What was on their minds? It is a mystery indeed. A mystery. And whatever was on their minds, it led the sheriff to shoot the judge. You see, we thought we had it all figured out, but now maybe we don't have it all figured out. Why do you think the sheriff shot the judge? And even though he did not shoot the deputy, did the deputy have far more to do with shooting the judge? Now, I do not like or love the fact that someone died and a family was impacted this way because of this case. But you have to say this is an intriguing mystery. Why did the sheriff shoot the judge? We do know this. We know the attorney is going to use the extreme emotional disturbance. That's going to be the key to the defense. You see, if the sheriff was under emotional disturbance from the lawsuit, and then you have the daughter's number in the phone of the judge, all of that, both of those two things would equal a certainly extreme emotional disturbance. And by Kentucky law, if he is under extreme emotional disturbance, it is not murder, It should be manslaughter, a much lesser charge. So, it will be a move for manslaughter for this charge. And he could well be moving away from the judge-daughter thing to perhaps use that as leverage. Another reason, you see, to use that as leverage to get them to agree to a lesser charge. But something else to think about. Maybe not only the judge's family would not want this to go to court, maybe the sheriff would not want this to be the front and center piece of this case. Why? He would not want to drag his daughter through all of that. Obviously, we know the sheriff would want to protect his daughter. Most of us believe that's the real reason why he shot the judge. But he would also want to protect his daughter from this type of publicity as well. So he may have well instructed his attorney, move away from this idea of the judge and my daughter. Let's just get away from that. And then add to that somehow, some way he believes somebody's kidnapping his daughter and his wife, and then you have extreme emotional disturbance. Well, my friend, you hear James and I, we say this all the time. We all leave a digital footprint in our lives. And in this case, what is on the judge's phone, what is on the sheriff's phone, and what is on the employee's phone. There, we will see what really happened in this case. There, we will find the real motive. I do not believe it'll be a death penalty case because I believe the circumstances will reveal that he was under extreme emotional disturbance. But what say ye? Love to hear from you. Reach out with a shout-out, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Go to our website, catch up on the other episodes. And don't forget to join James Buckland and I as we talk about this on our YouTube channel this week. So until this time, next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert. For the life you save, it may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com, or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.